Hello, and welcome back to Triclaw Gaming with me, Fletcher. And today I present for your viewing pleasure a different sort of video. This is going to be the first part in an in-depth review of Jurassic World Evolution. Why now, you ask? Well, with Prehistoric Kingdom coming soon, and with the rumours of a second Jurassic World Evolution game on the horizon, I think it's time that I return to those early days of JWE and have my final say on the game and give my final opinion. But first, let's get the usual YouTube stuff out the way. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and if you are already subscribed, please like and comment and ring the bell so that you stay up to date with every part of this review. So on to the video, and like I said, this is just one part of several where I want to go over the whole of JWE to come to some sort of final conclusion. So you all know how it will work, I'm going to divide the review into a number of separate videos, each one looking at a different aspect of the game. So where do we begin? Well, we have to start with the beginning, but before we do, I want to make something clear. You can like something, or watch something, or play something, and still be critical of it. I really like Star Trek, but I'll be the first person to criticise the show's more questionable episodes, or the movies. It seems that these days, the moment you are critical of something, you get the whole voice of the angry yob from the comments saying, well, if you don't like it, why watch it or play it? That just makes no sense. So please keep this in mind with this review. It's going to be critical, but that doesn't mean I hate it. I also want to make it clear that I have about 700 hours in JWE played, so I'm coming onto this review pretty well acquainted with how the game works. So, let's begin. It was 2018, and I was waiting to start my teacher training course, and like many others, I was greedily absorbing all the information I could about the new upcoming Jurassic World Evolution. The hype train had been building up all year for the game. The regular dinosaur reveal fact files for each species, and gameplay streams from the company and certain YouTubers all helped to fuel this hype. People like BestinSlot regularly did analysis of every species file, and I don't think it's wrong to say that a lot of YouTubers gained a lot of subs from those eager for news. Now, I have played a lot of park building and sim building games. I was a massive fan of the original SimCity series, adored City Skylines, and Jurassic Park Operation Genesis was one of the first games I ever bought myself for my first PC. I was no stranger to the genre, is what I'm getting at here. All the initial news looked good, the dinosaur list looked impressive, and the dinosaurs themselves looked impressive. Now, I didn't pre-order the game until a few hours before general release. I wanted to wait for the reviews to drop. I wouldn't call myself cynical, but I just wanted to see what the game reviewers had to say about it. Unfortunately, Jurassic World Evolution would be the game that made me no longer trust reviews, but we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit. So the day before the general Steam release and the reviews dropped, and off I went to investigate them. What I found was kind of bizarre. Almost all of the reviews were pretty positive, a stream of high scores and praise, all apart from the IGN review, which had a much lower score. It stood out so much that I actually went and read the review they posted several times over. From what I could see, the reviewer that had done the review didn't seem to be someone who liked park building or sim games in general, so probably like the others, I ignored that particular review and considered it a bit of an outlier. There was another reason why I felt confident enough to drop the pre-order price tag of 60 quid into JWE, which was at the time around $85, and also at the time the most I'd ever spent on a single game. I trusted the publisher. I had Frontiers Planet Coaster, and the idea of this company making a dinosaur game filled me with a great deal of trust that they would make a great park building game. I mean, look at Planet Coaster, I thought. The level of creativity and the replayability in that game is enormous. So I threw 60 quid at the game, and when it dropped, myself like so many others, got to creating the Jurassic Parks of our dreams.
24 hours later.
And what a pile of shit. After 24 hours of gameplay, I was so furious and so disgusted that I did something I had never done before. I wrote a lengthy Steam review and flicked the not recommended button. I then went onto Frontiers forums and wrote an even longer 4-page review where I metaphorically took the game out back and executed it in front of a firing squad. I was that angry and that disgusted. This caused quite a lot of hatred from the fanboys who threw angry vitriol at me. So what went wrong? Well, to start off this review, and in this first part, let's go back to that very early review I did and dig into what annoyed me. In those dark days, before DLC or patches, JWE was very much a shell, an unfinished product being sold for full price, lacking the sorts of features and polish that I had expected from Frontier. It's important for me to make clear that I trusted Frontier because of the experience I had with Planet Coaster. I expected something like that, but with dinosaurs and a Jurassic Park aesthetic. What we got, at the start, was, well, pretty damn shocking, and it called into question my faith in the game publisher. So what was the game like during those first 24 hours of gameplay? Well, at first, it wasn't what I would call bad. Sure, Matanceros was a little small in space for building, but actually at the start of the game, the size limitations on the islands wasn't really a problem. It wasn't like we had many dinosaurs to put down anyway in enclosures and paddocks, and those that we did have, especially the Struthiomimus and the Ceratosaurus, looked amazing. I especially loved how vibrant the Struthiomimus skins were, and even the Ceratosaurus looked good with its JP3 aesthetic. Unseen, however, on the forums, there were the early signs of trouble. It is interesting to me now, having gone back to find my very first review, just how many others were finding problems with the game at this time. Negativity about a lack of space, terrible controls, boring gameplay, and demands for refunds. I didn't see any of this at the time, but it was clear that my future disappointment with the game was not going to be an outlying case. But in those early days I could admit that I enjoyed Isla Matanceros and my first couple of hours. Okay. Those that know me well enough will accept that I am generally a cynical piece of work at times, and as such, even at this early stage, I did have some criticisms. In my first review, the opening salvo I fired at the game was why it even bothered letting you name your dinosaurs when they died so fast. At this time, the lifespans of dinosaurs was a lot lower, or their lifespans passed at a faster rate. It's difficult to know because the game never gave you any way to identify how much time was passing, so there was no way of determining the actual lifespan. Dinosaurs you made maybe half an hour ago would be dead. The short lifespans sort of made it pointless naming any of them. You could never get attached to these animals. Now, of course, this was later fixed, but in those early days, you'd spend a lot of time just replacing the dinosaurs that flopped down dead, seemingly without any time at all. The second salvo that was then fired at JWE in my review was the simply awful terrain system. Back at the start of the game's release, the terrain system and the terrain tools were even worse than they are now. Buildings required a lot more space around them before you could place them, and the slightest bit of unlevel terrain would stop the building dropping. All you would get is that much-hated terrain constraints warning. No warning as to what was actually wrong, just a blank terrain constraints. Sometimes the land would be totally flat, and it would still refuse. Get within an inch of the map boundary? Terrain constraints. The terraforming tools were terrible as well, which didn't help with the terrain constraints problem. Again, on the forums in these days, there were a lot of hatred towards the terrain issue, and it was easy to see why. Building in limited space was one thing. Not being able to make full use of all the space because of a terrible terrain system that actively made your life a living hell when you just wanted to put down one poxy fast food place was quite another. However, even with those two slight annoyances, I was still mostly positive about first playing Matanceros. Even putting up with Cabot Fitch wasn't annoying me, yet. And the dinosaurs were so well modelled that I could overlook a few rough edges. I can't explain enough how those first few dinosaurs make you feel, especially when you start unlocking the other skins. I thought to myself, if all the dinosaurs and all of their skins are as beautiful as this Struthiomimus, then the dinosaurs are going to rock. Cue the awkward looking away meme, eh? It was my switch to Isla Muerta, and the first proper island without much tutorialization, where any of the positive thoughts I had started to get gradually eroded away by the rapidly increasing level of niggling annoyances, like a souffle in a Class 9 gale. The terrain constraints and the poor terraforming tools were more of an issue here because of Muerta's unique shape and height. Why they made the island like this, I'll never know, but the difference in height between the front and the back of the map results in you losing more space due to having sheer cliff sides that you can do little with, especially as you get closer to the map entrance. The same issue also occurs at the beachfront. More of the limited space was wasted by the terrain tools. Then we come to the divisions. Now on the first island, the divisions just put you through some basic tutorial missions, so I couldn't really get a feel for them or how the system was going to work. Muerta's missions were the first proper ones we got. The security mission on Muerta required me to get a Dilophosaurus and a Velociraptor to fight. Okay, I thought, a bit harsh, but it is the security division, and a fight between a JP Dilo and a raptor should be pretty cool. Now, I'm generally not a fan of how Jurassic Park has depicted the Dilophosaurus, but I at least thought that it would use its venom spray in the fight with the raptor. It didn't. Not on day one. Now, whether it could, and it just didn't use it in that fight, I don't know. But at the time, all I saw was a venom-spitting Dilo not using its venom-spitting advantage. So all there was in this fight were two dinosaurs of relatively equal size using the same copy-pasted animations to claw at one another in this weird preset combat arena. And it was this fight that started me down the slippery slope of having a closer look at the dinosaurs that I had started to be so positive about. I couldn't stop seeing the copy-pasted animations and other oddities with the dinosaurs. Both the Huangosaurus and the Gigantospinosaurus both use exactly the same animations for leaving the hatchery. Why did the herbivores socialize in little triangular and square groups? It looked so weird and unnatural, like they were having secretive chats around a water cooler in an office. Why did the ceratopsians and the pachycephalosaurs not rut with one another? I was really excited to see these sorts of dinosaurs in the park using these behaviours, and yet none of them had them. Hell, the dinosaurs wouldn't even sleep. They wouldn't even lie down for a break. They would just forever wander. All these behaviours were shown off in the dino fact files. We had sleeping dinosaurs. We had rutting pachycephalosaurs. And this was the beginning of me asking myself, well, if Jurassic Park Operation Genesis had these exact behaviours over a decade ago, why doesn't JWE, a more expensive, more modern game, lack any of the features of a far older, less powerful one? My review got no better the more islands I looked at. My anger with how the game functioned increased. Every single island began to feel identical, and every park started to look identical. Placing down identical buildings, constructing what I thought was a shopping centre, not a zoo. So many types of shop! And what was the point? The ratings for food and drink in your parks didn't alter with what you served, so why did we need so many buildings doing exactly the same thing? Just to add more arbitrary grind to the research tree? Wouldn't it make more sense for us to just have one restaurant building, one shop, and one gift shop, and then unlock additional features for them? Why did we need so many buildings that basically had no purpose? It wasn't even like some were smaller, and therefore easier to place. They were all basically the same identical size. Why did the dinosaurs all feel like robots with limited animation sets? The hadrosaurs wouldn't eat from taller feeders, even though paleontologists pretty much agree that they could rear up on their hind legs. So why not have them eat from tall feeders and low feeders? It was also at this time where I was becoming sick of the annoyance of not being able to see a dinosaur's social requirement or skin before I cloned one. This didn't matter too badly for some dinosaurs, but for high social need ones, it was a persistent annoyance. By the time you made one, and could see the social need, and then went and cloned that number, the first dinosaur had gotten stressed and escaped. It was also annoying starting to see that my earlier excitement over dinosaur skins started to disappear, as more and more dinosaurs seemed to have dull and simple boring skins. Muerta gave us the Velociraptor, and the skins for that dinosaur at the time were insulting. There's no other word for it. They were bad. They were apocalyptically bad. They were so bad that I never used the most famous dinosaur in the franchise in any park. Then we had the carnivores, that, when escaped or found their way into a herbivore enclosure, would go on super killing rampages, killing everything that they could see regardless of hunger. This was especially annoying if the divisions got annoyed with you and opened all your gates. Seriously, who designs a park gate system where that could be even possible? Yes, here is a new dinosaur park, and we've made it so every single gate can be opened at once without any sort of safety mechanism or backup safety system. It makes no sense. I don't think a zoo in the world would function like this. Herbivores would get unhappy if away from trees too much, but because their knowledge of trees was based on a small area around them, and not the whole enclosure, tree-loving sauropods would only be happy if basically the whole paddock was pretty much trees. I remember not bothering with Camarasaurus in my parks, because it would never be happy, even with trees literally everywhere. To make it happy, I had to fill the entire paddock with trees to the point where you couldn't see the damn dinosaur. Oh, but if I thought it couldn't get any worse, I was going to be mistaken. My first encounter with Isla Pena was where any goodwill I had disappeared. An island where the size restrictions and terrain system works against you. At the time, I remember calling it Isla Arbitrary Difficulty. There have been yet more names. Isla Pena, Isla Tiny, Isla This Place is a Pile of. And yet again, we had the same process as always. Build the same dull buildings again, over, and grind through the same repetitive division missions. And all the time the game is shrugging its shoulders, aimlessly wandering on with no idea what it's doing. All it could do to wake you up when bored was scream, "Look, a dinosaur!" and run away before you could see the copy-pasted animations with its hands over its ears. The missions on Penna were equally as pointless and damn frustrating. Having to make 2 T-Rex because the second mission wouldn't recognize you already had a T-Rex annoyed me. Having to make a 3rd T-Rex because the second one escaped and it wouldn't detect the second one was back in its cage ready to try again made me switch to colourful metaphors about exactly where the entertainment guy could stick his mission. Or maybe where I would like to stick him. Inside the Rex enclosure, perhaps. Penna's small space and annoying map boundaries that wasted more of the limited space brought up more things I disliked. Why were the Jurassic World buildings so huge? Every single building seemed larger than it needed to be. There were no small variants of the buildings, it just wasted more space. The hotels were especially cumbersome to place, and didn't even offer food or drink. What sort of hotels are these? Why did we have to sell dinosaurs and not just move them to one of our other islands? Maybe I wanted to keep those 2 fairly expensive T-Rex and have them in other parks, but no, I had to sell them. Where did they go? Who am I selling dinosaurs to? But it was the tornadoes that really killed my enthusiasm. Now, let me do a little geography education here. A tornado is a violent weather formation, a column of swirling wind that can have wind speeds up to 300 miles an hour. It can destroy pretty much anything it comes in contact with. However, if JWE is to be believed, a tornado is no different to a light gust of wind that may, if you're unlucky, dislodge your hat, or perhaps blow your curtains around a little bit. They do a little damage, but they don't kill guests and they don't kill your dinosaurs. I actually watched guests walk through a vortex of a deadly weather system totally unharmed. I imagined scenes of them getting back to the hotel and someone going, "You seem to have a twig lodged through your skull," whereupon the guest goes, "Oh, so I do, that might explain that itch," before he goes back to what he's doing. In Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, SimCity, and most other building games, natural disasters are exactly that, disasters. In JPOG, you would have advance notice a few months of a tornado about to hit your park. It gave you time to prepare, and prepare you would need to do. Tornadoes would seriously damage buildings, destroy fence and paths, kill your dinosaurs, and kill your guests. And because guest deaths in JPOG were actually a bad thing, a tornado strike in an unprepared park could bankrupt you. In JWE, a tornado isn't even threatening, it's just an annoyance. The review on the website ended there, with me about to start Isla Sorna, but without much hope. At the end of the review, I listed another 40-odd points that were other annoyances and things I felt needed to be fixed. These ranged from gameplay issues to dinosaur problems and the inherent unreplayability of the game. The response to that first review was pretty mixed. A lot of people agreed with me. A YouTuber even made a video where he read out my review and basically agreed with it. However, I got a lot more hatred in response to it too. The fanboys who came out in hyper defense of any criticism to the game. In fact, the YouTuber who made the video about my review had to remove the video because of the sheer amount of backlash he was personally receiving. Rereading that old review, I stand by everything I wrote. I don't think it's wrong to say that at the time, the game wasn't even worth 30 quid, let alone 60. I think the level of anger I had was appropriate and fair. That anger was stimulated by many things. I felt that reviewers, especially some YouTubers, had dramatically overhyped the game and had in their own reviews failed to give time to the huge number of flaws and problems the game had. I felt, then and now, that when the game released, the rest of us were more or less lied to, conned into buying a game that was shockingly unfinished and devoid of content. And those individuals who we may have trusted to give an unbiased review had in fact been part of this deception. The lack of any sort of balance in the reviews or criticism was something I found completely unpalatable then and still find unpalatable today. Then there was Frontier themselves, who I had trusted to deliver, and from my perspective, had failed. Where was any of the creativity that Planet Coaster had? Hell, there wasn't even any park decorations. A park builder without a single decoration. What sort of people did they have on this game? Dinosaurs that didn't sleep, tornadoes that didn't feel anything more than a particle effect. How had the game been released in this state? I threw the review on Steam, gave the game a not recommended, and once Sauna was finished, uninstalled. I didn't even make a sandbox park, I was that annoyed with the game. And had JWE never improved, I probably wouldn't have played it much further. It was, for me, a tremendous disappointment. An example of the same overhyped marketing that video gaming as a whole is suffering from, and a game that just didn't give me what I wanted. I wanted a good Jurassic Park building game. Now, in the next part, we will look at where Jurassic World Evolution took itself, and see if the game we have now is worthy of the title Redemption, or whether this game, which was shockingly awful on release, failed to live up to any of the hype. But for now, I want to thank you for listening to this first part, and invite you in the comments to give your own thoughts. Did you get the game on day one? What were your memories of that time? Should any of you want to read my original review, I've also linked it down in the description. Don't forget to like and comment, and if you have not already, please do subscribe. I'll see you in the next part.